Have you ever wondered why 27 countries that spent centuries trying to erase each other from the map now sit at the same table? They even share one currency. And sometimes they seriously argue about how curved a cucumber should be. Yes, really. It sounds like the opening of a long joke, but that's exactly the European Union. A giant peace project that in 1945 would get you kicked out of a Hollywood pitch meeting. Let's be honest, Europe used to be extremely good at war. Really, really good. Not social media arguments, real wars that burned an entire continent. 2 world wars killed tens of millions, cities became piles of rubble. The economy looked like a phone dropped in water and run over by a truck. After centuries of war experiments, Europe realized something shocking. Maybe this isn't sustainable. So they tried something radical: economic interdependence. If countries rely on each other, war becomes punching your own wallet. The idea sounded naive, but the result was astonishing. More than 70 years of peace between former enemies. For EU citizens, life feels like a geography cheat code. Live in Spain, work in Germany, vacation in Italy on weekends. Call across borders with local prices, shop across countries without customs. The EU single market is the largest in the world. Over 450 million consumers and the second largest economy. When the EU knocks on big tech's door, companies listen. We think you're dodging taxes or mishandling data. Tech giants can't just laugh and walk away. The EU can fine them billions and force change. Here's a fun fact: the EU has 5% of the world's population. Yet it produces about 25% of global scientific research. Cross-border collaboration powers innovation. Scientists solve global problems together instead of fighting. But every paradise has a dark side. Critics say Brussels feels distant and confusing. Officials speak a language normal people don't understand. They call it the democratic deficit. People don't know who decides what or why. Many enjoy EU benefits but don't like the EU itself. They love free travel and cheap shopping. But EU elections feel unimportant. Then came the 2015 refugee crisis. A unity test the EU almost failed. Border countries felt abandoned. Others closed borders and stepped back. The borderless dream hit reality. Cultural and political fears resurfaced. Then comes the Euro story, a dark comedy. Imagine roommates earning €40 and €4 per hour. They share one wallet and decide spending together. What could go wrong? A lot. The Greek debt crisis proved the risks. One currency without unified policy is risky. Rich countries bailed out poorer ones. Poor countries felt suffocated by austerity. And everyone argued. A lot. Still, one truth remains undeniable. Alone, each EU country is smaller globally. Superpowers shape global markets and politics. A single European country becomes a whisper. Together they become a choir. Separately, they're karaoke singers out of tune. Defense is another issue. Europe still relies heavily on NATO. A unified EU army would be the third largest. It could save hundreds of billions. On paper, the EU always sounds logical. In reality, it's incredibly complex. 27 cultures and political systems must coexist. Hundreds of millions share hopes and fears. The EU isn't perfect. Sometimes it feels like a 70-year group meeting, and no one agrees on the menu. But look at the bigger picture. A continent defined by war now defines cooperation. The world is growing more chaotic. Global crises appear like Netflix releases. So the real question isn't whether the EU is perfect. Is standing alone safer in the storm? Or is it better to share one imperfect boat? That boat may still be under repair, but at least everyone is rowing in the same direction. Because history taught Europe a painful lesson. Cooperation is cheaper than destruction. Trade agreements beat battlefield victories. Negotiation beats reconstruction. The EU is basically a peace machine. A slow, bureaucratic, sometimes annoying peace machine. But still a peace machine. Think about how radical this really is. Countries voluntarily sharing power, sharing laws, borders, and money. That's historically unprecedented. Of course, compromises are messy. Politics becomes slower and louder. Decisions require endless meetings and mountains of paperwork. Sometimes it feels painfully inefficient. But inefficiency can be the price of peace. Because fast decisions often mean unilateral power. And Europe has tried that before. It didn't end well. The EU also creates a shared identity. A generation growing up Europeans, students studying abroad easily, workers moving for better jobs, friends from different countries meeting daily, borders slowly becoming lines on maps. Still, skepticism never disappears. National identity remains strong. Many fear losing sovereignty. Others fear losing cultural uniqueness. These fears fuel political tension. Yet the EU keeps evolving. Crisis after crisis. Adapting, reforming, negotiating. Slowly moving forward. It's less like a finished building, more like a construction site. Always noisy and full of debate, but constantly being built. And maybe that's the real miracle. A project that never stops trying. So here's the final thought. The EU may be imperfect and frustrating, but it turns centuries of enemies into partners. And that might be its greatest achievement. The real question is still yours to answer.